Hello, hello. We are. Hey there, Elise.
Hey Aiden, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you doing?
Doing well. Found a little green space to take a rest.
It looks beautiful. I bet that is very welcome after being in a very hot, fast-paced courtroom, huh?
It was, but our counsel, Paul Schwiep, did a fantastic job representing the center and Friends of the Everglades, and we are hopeful and ready to keep moving.
Okay, well, I'm so glad to hear it. For everyone who's just joining, I am here live from the Center for Biological Diversity with Elise Bennett, our Florida and Caribbean director. Elise, tell us where you're at, what's going on, and what you just came hot off of.
Yeah, so I am down in Miami for an appellate argument over the detention facility in the Everglades that's cruelly named Alligator Alcatraz. I'm sure you've heard of it. This facility was built, gosh, back in the summer. It began in late June. It was opened in early July, and it has had devastating impacts on endangered species, clean water, and public access, including access for the Miccosukee tribe. And so, of course, we had to go to court with our friends at Friends of the Everglades to challenge this terrible project and try to shut it down and protect what's most special and important about Florida down in the Everglades.
Yes. And what's sort of unique about the angle that you guys are able to take being environmental lawyers and part of environmental groups?
Yeah. So, what struck me when I first heard about this project is I thought, no way can they be doing this because there's no way that they could comply with these federal laws that are really common sense. The National Environmental Policy Act, sometimes people call it the look before you leap law. And the idea there is you should understand the consequences of the actions before you take them, and you should make them public. And you should also consider alternatives. And who doesn't do that on a day to day basis when they're making a consequential decision? And so when it came to building this federal immigration detention facility in the Everglades, as an environmental attorney, I thought there is no way they could have met environmental laws and assured us that the Everglades and Florida panthers, Florida bonneted bats, and a whole host of other species will be protected.
Wow. Well, I'm really curious, and I think, and for those of you who are just joining, we're here right after the another hearing, another iteration of the hearing on the Alligator Alcatraz case with Friends of the Everglades and Center for Biological Diversity. And something I'm really curious about, Elise, is what does it mean to do the work that you do? I think a lot of us are very familiar with what it means to be sort of on the front lines and out on the in the ground and what it means for people to do that. But what does it mean to hold the ground in court? Like for us lay people who don't necessarily know what that means.
Yeah, well, I'm a born and raised Floridian, and like many Floridians, I've watched our state and the federal government trash some of the most special places here, and it feels really helpless when you watch that happen. Um, but when I went to law school and learned about laws like the National Environmental Policy Act, the Endangered Species Act, Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, I realized that we had these incredibly strong laws that were meant to protect our land and waters for you and me, and it is so gratifying now after working hard in school, working here at the center for many years, to be able to take everything we've learned and fight for this incredibly special place.
Yeah, that's I'm always so constantly inspired by what you guys do, and I think that it's really the unglamorous side of being heroic. It's really I imagine it's a lot of documents and a lot of legal jargon that you must be sifting through. Well, I'm sure that people are really curious. Is there anything you can tell us about what went down? And just to preface it for people who are joining, there's always, things that have to be kept at a certain level of discretion while they navigate things internally. But anything that you can let us know.
Sure. So what we were here in Miami for was an appellate argument before an appeals court. And the appeal was over an injunction that we won back at the end of the summer. A district judge wrote an 83-page order making significant factual findings that this was a federal yeah, I got a leaf in my mouth. That this was a federal project.
The
But
trees
you
are
got to keep
supporting you.
they're feeding me.
Yeah.
Um, But the judge found that this is a federal project, that there was significant and irreparable environmental damage, everything from water quality impacts, jet fuel, new paving, all the chemicals from that running off into the wetlands and the Everglades, impacts to Florida panthers. We only have about 200 of them left in the wild. And this facility has ousted them from about 2,000 acres of prime breeding habitat. This is habitat they need for their survival and
Mm,
recovery. The court also found impacts to Florida bonneted bats, which are Florida's largest bats. They've got these enormous wingspans and they can't fly in forests. They actually, well, they can, but where they really soar is out in open, dark night skies. And that's where they go to hunt for beetles and moths. And the court said, these blazing industrial lights that you have shining out into the night that can be seen from 15, 20, 30 miles away are impacting bats so that they can't feed themselves. And these are endangered bats. And all of these impacts are unacceptable, not to mention all of the impacts on the nearby Miccosukee tribe, who are the neighbors to this facility, who have been the stewards of this land for time immemorial. And so there was this incredible order backed by a wealth of evidence. And the judge said, you have to wind down operations. You have to turn off the lighting. You have to take down the fences so the public and wildlife can access the site, and you can't take any more contaminants on, and you have to get them out. And of course, the facility can't operate with all of those activities going on. And so the judge said, you can't bring any more people here. And
wow. And that
for
was
a few,
last year. It was
that was
last year
last
that that
year.
happened.
And for a fleeting moment, the facility started to wind down, but almost immediately, the state of Florida and the federal government filed an appeal, and they sought and won a stay, which put a pause on that injunction. So even though we had won it, the activities continued at the site, and so we have been itching to get into court and make our arguments, get through this appeal, and get back to district court and build the full case and stop this thing for good.
And is that sort of what happened today? It was sort of just like a let us get back into court situation.
Well, I think what we would love most is for the court to uphold this injunction because it's
Mm,
supported by the facts, because this has to be a federal facility. It's a federal detention center, regardless of whether the state has partnered with the federal government. The federal government has approved this. And of course, at the time, we had evidence that they had agreed to fund it. And now we know that they are going to do it. They are going to release that
wow.
funding for the site. And so it's really, it feels like an important moment, but I feel like it's important to remember that it's not the end. Sometimes you hear appeal and you think it's over, but we're actually just at the beginning of this case.
Okay, well, that's really good to know. I have a couple questions here. Let me see if I can find. I saw one that was interesting. I'm curious if you would know. Was there a post? This is from Madison Sweetheart. Thanks for your question. Was there a post on the Federal Register about the environmental impacts? Is that something you know about?
No, I'm not one that I have seen, and certainly not one before the project began, which is when
Mm,
that notice would normally be given. Even to date, well, I'll say when the facility originally opened, both the state and the federal government were saying there are no impacts at all, which is
mm,
impossible when you're bringing thousands of people into the middle of the Everglades. It's important to note that this site had no sewage system,
oof.
no stormwater, drainage to make sure that the pollution isn't going out into the wetlands. Not even enough electricity. In fact, they have been running off of large generators, diesel generators, all day, all night. And there's
My
just no
God.
question that that has an impact.
Yeah, not to
Yeah.
mention that you can just see it, I guess, from probably outer space at this point with the
And you actually can. There is satellite imagery. And if you look at the site before it opened, it's completely dark in that area of Big Cypress. If you look a few days after it opened, it looks lit up like a Christmas tree in the middle of the Everglades.
Oh my
Um,
God. In the
and you can
middle of our
imagine.
of public lands of
Right.
Cypress National Park.
Right. I think it's kind of absurd when you really back out. We're having these very detailed legal arguments here on appeal, but it's so straightforward and common sense. This
Right.
facility doesn't belong here.
That is so self-evident. Well, That's just another kudos to you guys for both having the wherewithal to look at something so simple, so plainly wrong, and to go through what I can only imagine are endless hoops and hurdles. I have a question here. What does the how does the Endangered Species Act play into this?
Yes. So the Endangered Species Act protects a couple dozen species that live in this area, everything from the panther and the bat, like we talked about, but also really rare plants. There's one called the Everglades bully, which I love. Paradoxically, it's got these soft little leaves and it's sharp spines and these kind of Sputnik looking flowers. Just these incredible creatures, plants and animals that you can't find anywhere else except the Everglades. And the Endangered Species Act protects these species in a couple of ways. One of them is it prohibits the unauthorized take of a species. And
Mm.
take includes harming, harassing, killing, shooting, hunting, wounding, all kinds of activities that hurt species.
So it's really a
What's
nice
really
catch-all. That's really a nice catch-all. It's like really a strong law, it sounds like.
right. The idea is that they're struggling to survive. We shouldn't be doing things to make it harder for them.
Right.
And so for the panthers, of course they're being harassed and harmed when they can't access their breeding area, when the people and the lights are scaring them away. We also know from a panther expert that when panthers are pushed out of their individual territories, male panthers can actually fight sometimes to the death. So it really is life or death for these panthers when they're being forced out of this habitat. Of course, there's a lot of traffic too, which increases the risk of getting hit by cars, which is one of the leading direct threats to panthers. We lose about 20 to 30 each year on the roads, and this risks increasing that.
Oh my gosh. Oh, well, just a deep breath for all of us trying to take all that in. I think I know that you've had a very long day, so I'd say, how about we wrap this up with what do you foresee being next? How can people sort of stay tuned, stay involved? Who should they follow? Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So, well, I'll say this. Our partners at Friends of the Everglades, at Earthjustice, our council at Coffee Burlington, it is a huge team of us working in the courts, but we can't do it alone in the courts. It really matters that people continue to speak up. And I know we're in a wild world right now where there's a lot of things to care about, but we have to keep engaging on this and making it clear that the American people don't want an immigration prison in the Everglades. And so I would encourage people to continue sending letters, making phone calls. It's got to be very clear to our lawmakers that this is unpopular. And indeed it is. We get calls every day about how unpopular this facility is.
Wow.
We're just so grateful to have our members and our supporters and partners. And I just encourage you to keep up the hope and keep plugging away. And we will too in the courts.
Totally. Well, thank you. Here, it looks like I'm gonna take there's one more question that I think.
Sure.
Do you know what an EIS is? Where EIS is done?
An environmental impact statement that's
Ah.
required for major. It is raining here, but I'm just going to keep talking because I'm a Florida
Oh,
girl.
okay.
But I just felt like I should note that in case I start to look a little soggy. But yes, an environment. An environmental impact statement is required for these major federal actions that have significant impacts. And so, of course, that's what would be needed here. When you're bringing thousands of people out into the middle of the Everglades and you're building a prison facility and you're trucking human waste on and off the site, that requires an environmental impact statement. And we have not
Wow.
seen that to date.
So it just seems like overall, just about every possible procedural step could have been skipped has been skipped, and that's why you guys are there helping out. So thank you so
Right.
much. I see some questions about how people can help, how law students can help. I think as long as
Yes.
you guys are staying tuned, following, you can of course donate to the center. You can of course take action in our action alerts. And if you're already a law student, I think that you're on the right track to help us. We need as many of you guys out there as possible. We
Yes.
need
And
we
the
need
center
more
hires
Elises.
clerks. Yeah, the center hires clerks. So consider applying for a clerkship.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, Elise, thank you so much for your time. Go get out of the rain, get some rest, regroup, and we appreciate you and all of your remarkable work down there.
It was a pleasure to be with you, Aiden, and good to see folks on here. Thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Yes. Okay. From the center for the wild.
Wild.
Bye bye.